Hi guys, my name is Pablo Contriciani. I am a visual artist and an art instructor, originally from Argentina, living and working in Miami. I'm going to have in a few moments an art conversation with other artist colleague, Tom Virgin. Tom is one of the most important printmaking artists in Miami. He has a strong influence in the local scene. With a long career, he's also an art instructor, and his studio, Extra Virgin Press, located in Little Haiti, was, I think, the only print lab open during the pandemic. I really recommend you to visit it. It's near to Dorsch Gallery in 2nd Avenue Northwest and 59th Street. We are going, currently Tom is exhibiting in 2 shows. One is on view until the beginning of March. It's in a local gallery in Little Haiti. And the other one is going to open in February 12 in Florida Atlantic University. There is information about both shows here in this post. And also you have Tom information to visit his studio. We are going to talk tonight about his creative artist process, how he produced Tom his work, why, what's the meaning behind it, what inspired him. The goal with this conversation is for you to have a better understanding of Tom's work. And I'm going to repeat this series of conversation every Tuesday at 6 p.m. here, every time with a different artist guest. The goal is for you to understand, to have a better perspective about this topic, the creative artist process. What happens when the artist is creating, why the artist is doing this. I hope this series of conversations can help you to understand that. I'm going to call Tom. Just be patient a few moments until I reach him, and you can write your questions in the chat during our conversation, and I'm going to read them to Tom once we finish our dialogue. Thank you so much.
Hello.
Hello. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. How about you?
Very good. A little nervous to be with you, to tell you the truth.
I don't know why that is.
You're a celebrity, Tom.
I don't know. I don't know of any famous printmakers. Well, that's not true, actually. I do know the famous printmakers, but that's because I'm a printmaker.
Let's start. Mention to the audience, how did you get into the arts?
I wanted to take art when I went to college.
Okay.
I always made stuff, but I never took art in high school. I had a teacher in middle school that pissed me off, and I just never took art at school. But I made things all the time. I made things for the school. I made things in shop class. I took all those other classes. But when I went to college, my dad said, no, you can't take art. You'll never make any money. So I took journalism and advertising, and after 2 years, I dropped out. And after I dropped out, I did a lot of things. I did take some art classes in Colorado. My parents moved to Florida. Eventually, they gave me their forwarding address. And when I moved to Florida, I took a long series of bad jobs. I worked for family. I was a gardener. But at a point like the late 70s, I just said, you know what? I'm just going to take art classes. So I just took one at a time. And after a while, it seemed like there was a good chance that I would end up with an art degree. And I did start making more things. I did start showing my work. And I always was a teacher, but I was a teacher. I taught swimming. That was one of my first jobs when I was like 16. So to go from teaching art after teaching everything else wasn't a big jump.
Tom, there, then when you drop the possibility to work as in advertising, uh, that was the moment you decided to be an artist. There was a moment that you have to take the decision to be an artist.
I made a book when I was 5 years old. I think that my dad drew something for me. He didn't draw it for me. He drew it for my younger sister. He drew a pine tree. And she was probably 3. I might have been 5. But watching him draw this tree that looked real was a miracle to me. So I think probably at that point, I was going to do something like that. My grandmother gave me a little Kodak Brownie camera when I was about 8. They bought me some film. No one yelled at me. I could do whatever I wanted. The film was expensive, and you didn't get to process it like you do with digital pictures. But I was always making things. I did get into journalism in high school. I always read. I always wrote. So when I started taking a lot of art classes, that was just like finding more tools that I could make things with. And also, I made things as a carpenter. I made things as a gardener. I made things because I learned how to cook when I was about, my mom got tired of cooking for me every time I said I was hungry. So I think I might have been 7 when she told me, this is how you make an egg sandwich. And she turned on the stove and had me put something in the pan and put 2 eggs in there. No better
You
yet.
have to make one for me, Tom.
Put
When I
3
visit
in
your
there.
studio.
Yeah. So I've been cooking too. I mean, it all kind of goes into the same thing.
Tom, when did you decide to be a printmaker?
After I got through the basic drawing classes, even before, when I had the opportunity to make prints, I had a girlfriend after I dropped out, and she took a printmaking class in college, and she lived 5 hours away from me, and I went up to Upper Michigan. Michigan looks like this, and I went up here, a 5-hour drive from Detroit or Lansing, and they were working in the studio, and they're ignoring
That was
me.
love.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful. And so while they were making their stuff, I made a print. And they were like, how did you do this? I said, well, you just cut this paper and all the stuff was there. And I loved it. So when I had the opportunity when I was in school in Florida, I really wanted to take printmaking. It's like everything is a secret until you print the print. You don't really know what you're going to get. The plate that you make is the art, but no one ever sees it but you.
Yeah, so, that is the original. Exactly.
Yeah. And you can keep one, you can sell one, and you can give one away.
Exactly.
And I like that because, I'll always I just found the first print I made, throwing a bunch of junk away.
Oh, you have it there? You can show us.
It's buried in a portfolio.
Well, if you want.
But if anyone comes by, I'll dig it out.
Tom, what do you consider the most important element in your work? I mean,
making
aesthetically or as a message, whatever point of view you want to choose.
I think that in all the time that I've been making things, like everyone, I've made things that are giant. I've done art in public places. I've done great big installations. I made a banner I painted murals with kids that were 300 feet long, and they were my labor, and they were my artists too. But now, because I have a letterpress that prints about this big, about 12.5 by 15, when I fill the boxes with all the stuff that I made, I can carry one, and it's got a lot of stuff in it. I try not to make as many big things as I used to. I made prints for at least 10 years, 10 or 20 years. But for 10 years, I made a lot of prints. And the prints when I was in college, when I was in the MFA program at University of Miami, all my friends were like, you should make books. And I'm like, I'm busy making prints. Come on. And Lee Nicholas says to me, do you want to enter a book contest? And I said, yeah. And she said, well, you have to make a book. I said, okay. So that was how I turned the corner into books. And the books became this bridge between the story you're asking me and the images that I make, because I pretty much make pictures of my neighborhood. Either they're the neighborhoods inside my head or the neighborhoods that are physically where I used to live, the mountains of Oregon. Like Hokusai made 100 views of Mount Fuji. I made 13 views of Mount Hood. I went out to Portland and stayed there 2 or 3 times. I had friends there, family. I was a resident artist. I was a resident artist in Red Wing, Minnesota, 7 times. It's like where I grew up, and it's like when I grew up. So everything changed in Detroit, but Red Wing stayed the same. And they had a letterpress in the studio. And the guy who owned the letterpress, after I was there a couple times, he goes, you can use this, go ahead. And so printing with a letterpress, it would be like riding on a bus all your life and then have someone buy you a Corvette. You're still going from point A to point B, but the technical things that you can do with a letterpress, and also you can print 50, and then I can sell them, and I can put them together into books. I can make books that I can put on a shelf, and if you pulled it off a shelf 100 years from now, it would look the same. I studied bookmaking in New York and in Minneapolis and places like that. There's German ledgers from the 1500s that have waxed covers, and they look brand new. So
Wow.
I got grandkids. So the people that have my books in their collection, my grandparents died when I was pretty young. And I'd never really had a big opportunity to talk to them. My dad's parents died when I was really young. My mom's dad died pretty young. My grandmother lived a long time, and she had stories to tell. I remember those stories. My mom had lots of stories to tell. My mom will be in a book. So all these things, and like my mom and your mom, I'm guessing, said the same thing a lot of times. A different language, but the same thing. So it's these common elements of life that we see, and it stops us in our tracks for a minute. Like this print here, I'm going to show you this print. This is the print that I just made. And this print is the street right outside Dorsch. So the moon was coming up and the sky was changing color, and I was looking through the fence, and I had been locked up in the studio driving back and forth from Coconut Grove to Little Haiti every day since March, really every day for a year or so now. But that one thing stuck, and so that I made it for me, but I made it for me because I want you to see it. It's one of those things that when the Japanese made their prints, they made their prints when there was no cell phone, when there was no television, when there was no art gallery, when there was no books that you could buy at a bookstore. They made these little paper prints that everybody could have, and they are very much the texture and the flavor of life, but on a piece of paper. I like that.
Yes, I saw some of those, at the Met, especially, yes. I think also in the museum in Philadelphia, they have a good section. Tom, what is your inspiration to work?
Well, I really like working. So I had the series of bad jobs that I had. They weren't bad jobs. They were all good jobs. Before I was a teacher, I was a carpenter, I was a cook. I built rough trusses. I moved furniture. Uh, I planted plants. I painted houses. I did a lot of jobs. My grandfather had a wood shop, and he had a 3-car garage after he retired, and he had a wood shop with lathes and all the tools you needed to make things. And I would sit on a chair and watch him make a freighter out of wood. He lived on a river, and the front of his house was on the river in Southwest Michigan, the Marine River. And he would make these things, and I'd look at him and think, that's just incredible. So the idea that I could work with tools, and the engagement when I'm making books and sewing bindings and stuff, it's kind of like meditation. Sometimes it's like jail too, because when you're sewing 50 books, it takes a long time.
Yeah.
But then the books go out into the world, and whenever I work with someone else, because I love doing collaborations, when I do something with someone else, I always give them books too. So then they put the books out into the world, into places where I wouldn't put them. And after being a teacher for 25 years, I've been hanging around kids most of my life. These kids are really generous with me. They tell me about what it's like to grow up in Nicaragua, Honduras, Guatemala, Cuba, all over South Central America. I had a girl that came into my class 2 years ago from Siberia in March. And I'm like, wow, you must be glad. And she goes, oh, I miss Siberia. And I thought, tell me more about that. and they do. And they tell me stories. Those kids taught me that everybody isn't the same color. Those kids taught me when they called me Mister, that it wasn't because they didn't know my name. It was because they were using the honorific. And they were saying, you're my teacher, I respect you. And so being a gringo in South Florida, everybody who's different from me, when you're a teacher, they give you everything. They bring you food. They tell you, oh, my mom used to say that to me, only she said this. And they give me these literal translations. And that kind of comes back to language. The stories, both in books and that people tell me, and the pictures they make, those things are very engaging to me. They ground me to this planet, even during COVID.
Tom, life sounds so beautiful through your words. You have a passion for life that you can transmit that passion to the listener, the person that is listening to you. It's very beautiful, your stories. Which artists have an influence in your work, or which artists you admire and have an impact in your own work?
Old school, you got to go to Hokusai and Hiroshige, 2 Japanese masters. Toulouse-Lautrec was a master draftsman. When I was drawing 40 hours a week in grad school, I still couldn't hold a candle to Toulouse-Lautrec, but the pencil and me were more connected. Swoon, a young woman who started out doing paste ups in New York. She does a lot of figurative work, and now she's doing installations in museum shows. The Mexican muralists, because I grew up in Detroit, I saw Diego Rivera's pictures of Detroit, and they're incredible because I'm in this town that's full of cars and full of factories before everything crashed and burned. And I could go into the museum and see all these guys. And when we were in school, they took us to DIA. They took us to the Detroit Institute of the Arts. And they showed us all this stuff. And I'm like, wow, look at this. He made a whole nother world. Just a room by itself. I love Monet. I saw all the Impressionists in a show at the Detroit Art Institute. I'll never forget it. If I live to be 100, I'll remember haystacks. I'll remember the Rouen Cathedral. I'll remember Van Gogh. I'll remember the Renoirs. And that color will never go away. As my vision gets worse, I see more Impressionists. Charles White, American black man who he makes people and they look like they're going to get up out of the picture and just start talking to you. Alice Neal makes these portraits.
Yeah.
David Hockney's portraits are so animated. He's doing stuff with the tablet and everything, but going back to the old stuff and the pools and all that, those were a big influence on printmaking. Jim Dine drew pictures of his grandparents' tools in their hardware store. He was probably one of the earliest influences of drawing objects.
Yeah.
And that, you know, that's just like all the stuff that's around you.
I saw that David Hockney retrospective I think was at the Met in New York or at the MoMA. I don't remember if the Met or the MoMA, but I saw the things with the iPad, and it was a retrospective. You saw the whole work. It was amazing.
Yeah.
How you produce your work, Tom? Tell me, maybe take one of the pieces that you have in your studio.
Well,
tell me and the audience how you made it from the start, from the scratch to the end.
Is a letterpress.
Okay.
So this tool here allows me to put stuff in the bed of the press. This is a Black History poster that I printed for the kids at Beach High and some other schools because, come on, I got a press. These are also these are Black History posters that I did last year. And I started doing Black History posters because a couple of years ago or a few years ago, they postponed Black History Month. And I'm like, are you kidding me? You can't postpone Black History Month. Every day is Black History Day. So, so anyhow, if I was going to do a drawing, I would draw on paper, and I would work out, like for the picture with the moon, I would work out the drawing, and then I would draw directly on a plate, and the plates look like this. They're linoleum, and I would draw directly on the plate, and then after I drew on the plate, I would cut around the lines. So the black is the easy part. I don't have to do anything. I just leave it alone. And then once I print the plate, I can print it any color I want. And I can add and subtract. When I print the plate, it looks like this, which is remarkably different than what it looked like when I made the plate. The image looks the same except for it's reversed.
Exactly.
But the other thing is when you paint in layers, and you work from the bottom up or you work from the top down. You paint light to dark or dark to light, and you create this matrix of image and color and, oops, I didn't mean to do that. Image and color and everything else when you're painting. It's the same with prints, only it builds a little slower. I love drawing, but the prints allow me to make drawings and then make the drawings more comprehensive with an environment, with other parts to it. I can layer in the color. So I used to just make black and white prints. There's one back there, a big one.
Yes.
And I like making black and white prints because it's mostly just straight up drawing. And I did those when I went on all these residencies to national parks. And the first time I went, I just wanted to go on a residency because I had been to several workshops. But once I learned how to use the tools more and I got some skills, I wanted to go and make a bunch. So I would make usually somewhere between 3 to 5 pictures, and then I would draw them and cut them. After a couple residencies, I would go and make maybe 7. I would take millions of pictures. I'd go out on site and draw. And I would create this narrative. It's a visual narrative. Sometimes I would make books, and the books would be another visual narrative. And sometimes the words went with the books. And sometimes other people, these guys made stuff for my book this time. And I made the art that went with one guy,
So beautiful.
but other people made the art that went in some of the other pictures. So, and it was fun for me because I got to work with a lot of people. I put the book together. I collected everything for everybody. I was the only one that decided where things went, but everybody else kind of knew what I was doing. This
Mhm.
book is with poets and writers and artists. This book here is just me and John Dufresne. John Dufresne is he's kind of he's a treasure in South Florida. For
Mhm.
probably 30 years, every Friday, John taught writing classes for free. They just met up and they taught writing classes. And he and I have done a few different projects together. Sorry about that. I just dumped a bunch of wood on my feet. This story here was Mount Hood, and I had a bunch of uh, prints that I made, but I decided that I would make a book out of water cut metal and a photograph. And the photograph is the smoking crater of Mount St. Helen
Mhm.
with Mount Hood in the background. So Hokusai didn't get to go up in a plane and take pictures of everything. He just had to, this was a building that came down, the Everglades Hotel. When they were tearing down the whole downtown before the crash in 2008,
Mhm.
I started making a book about it because they tore down my next door neighbor too. And uh, it ended up being a book and an installation and a bunch of other stuff. But there are objects of beauty in there. When I was in between, when I went to school and dropped out, my brother-in-law took me up in a small plane, and we shot pictures of Christos surrounded
Yeah.
islands. But we went so early in the morning that it was all gray, and I had to change to infrared film. But the infrared film made these pictures that looked like they were Christo in another dimension.
Yes.
So this image here is from a book that I read by Louise Erdrich, and the top is the woods in the back of the residency. This is in Red Wing. The words come from the book La Rose. The furniture came out of my studio. The shadows came from the guy who's in the studio next to me, but he's not in the picture because the people in the book were invisible. And I wanted to tell that story about the invisible people. This is the project that I worked on all summer, and everything is postponed until my mentor and friend and inspiration in printing, Amos Kennedy, comes down, and he'll come down when he gets vaccinated and everything,
Mhm.
and we'll have a party. We'll all print. He does stuff with social justice, and so I printed words that I picked, and I printed words that other people picked. I printed words in Spanish, in English, in Creole, and all kinds of stuff. And I really had a blast with that. Lucky for
Tom,
me, I got to print all that time, or I would have been crazy.
you mentioned earlier that you go every day from Coconut Grove to your studio. You go every day to the studio. How is a day in your studio? You like to work for many hours. You work, like to go every day. Tell me a day in your studio. How is it?
I get up early. I usually read the paper and drink coffee. I come to the studio, and the stuff in the paper often ends up in my work because I do make work about things that are happening in the world.
Okay.
Although the only thing I made regarding the last 4 years was posters that said vote. So if I don't like something, I don't want to make a picture about it. I did that one time, and I realized that I was advertising something that I didn't like.
Exactly.
And so I stopped, and I never did it again. But I did make posters and sent them all to Colorado for a nationwide vote initiative by Amalgamated Printers. And they sent me some other posters that other people did. That's what the empty clips are on the wall over there. I just took down everyone else's vote posters after the inauguration. So I get in. If I have something already set in the press, I'll print because it's a step-by-step process. It takes a while to lock in the press. If I need to make a plate, I usually do that first. And you have to draw the plate. Then you have to cut the plate. Then you have to proof the plate, which means you have to put ink on it and print it so you can see what you did, because you think you know. And after a while, you kind of know. But even when you're painting and you know what you're painting, if you do something and you like it, you're like, wait a minute, what did I just do? I want to do that again. So, you know, I mean, I know what I'm doing, but that doesn't mean I want to know what I'm doing. When I'm done with it, I don't want to say that's exactly what I wanted. I just want to do it. So part of the time is cleanup. Part of the time is spent shuffling stuff around, because when you're in printing, you know, things dry, they get moved to somewhere else. I spend time online. I've been every Friday I go and hang out with printers at the Hamilton Type Museum in Two Rivers, Wisconsin. There's probably somewhere between 50 and 200 printers with somewhere between 20 and 40 years of experience, way more than me. And somebody gives a presentation and everybody can just ask questions after the Zoom. So it's been a blessing. I've seen book artists from California to here. I've been to print shops, big print shops, not commercial shops, but like historic shops in Italy and London, England. But book artists are kind of geeky and they travel from far away to talk to each other when they're making books. So a lot of the things I do, they just take forever. I do really slow work. I think it comes from being a gardener. Like if you want big trees, you have to be very patient.
Tom, is there a message in your art? And if there is a message, what is the message?
Knowing you is part of my art. When I was at the art center, I was making pictures of the Keys. And you saw the pictures when I was making them. And I'm sure you had that sense of, I've been there, I saw that. I'm wanting to make things, like I had a kid tell me in class one time, I'm like, where do you live? He says, I live on the beach. I said, oh, have you ever been to, I don't know, I think I said Michigan. And he goes, no. I said, wow. He says, I've never been off the beach. I said, come on. You never went to Disney World? He said, I've never been off the beach. And that was probably 25, 30 years ago. And I had already been to a couple national parks. And I went on vacation a couple times as a kid, but we didn't travel the world. My dad worked all the time too. He just didn't make art. And so when I go to these places, they're national parks. They belong to you. They belong to me. They belong to every kid in every class I ever taught. But if they don't know what it is, they'll never be able to go there and look at it. They won't even know if someone gets rid of it. And a lot of the things that are in national parks, like South Florida, are in this kind of precarious position of either being a water event or having someone sell the mining rights and they won't be there. So these places, I grew up and I had the city where I could be. And I was fortunate. I was a lucky kid. I got to go up north once in a while where all the trees were. And I knew the difference between the two. But the kid who never left Miami Beach, he had a great life. I mean, you know what it's like on the beach. You get on a bus. You don't need a car. You can walk to the beach. There's restaurants from all over. There's food everywhere. It's really wonderful food. But it's a very small environment. Yeah. I want that bigger world that I travel to be there. And the fact that I hang around with kids and people that act like kids, artists, sharing that with people that I know makes it like me showing you, it could be as simple as me showing you my vacation pictures. And you know, I've seen pictures from where you came from, and I always am like, wow, I'm like the kid in the candy store. I don't want to leave. That stuff to me, and painting. The first time I saw a Rothko painting in a graduate class in painting projected on the wall, I felt like I was in church. It was just an entirely transformative experience where the color took me places that I didn't even know were there. And then, you know, I read about the chapel and all the other stuff. Those things they're man-made. Those people made me feel that way. I'm really grateful for everybody who does that. I'm just doing my little part with little stories.
Exactly. You can make an impact like when you observe that Rothko piece
Yeah.
with your art. Talking about that, do you have a most emblematic piece in your production? Something that is your
For me
favorite piece?
personally, the last one I did. It's always the last one I did because I locked and loaded on this little space on this planet, or this little space that was inspired by this planet. It's the only one I've visited so far in my many childhoods. And the one about "We Love You, Don't Cry" is special to me for a lot of reasons. But I love words, and I love books, and I love the idea of an image in a book having two parallel conversations, the words and the images. And with the collaborations, that idea, the ability to print for somebody or to make a book for somebody and add something to it, for me, is really meaningful because those stories combine and they go out to a wider audience. And it wouldn't, I mean, if you had a poet and you made non-representational work and integrated those two things together, you could create the very same experience of looking at a plane flying over a smoking volcano. It just might be feeling different, but all those experiences kind of come from the same root. They're this thing that a human recognizes something greater than themselves. It works as a lever to make people change, and it works as glue to like tie people together too.
Exactly. Tom, what do you think about beauty? Beauty is something that you pursue, something that your work has. What is beauty for you?
I think it's my job my job as an artist to find it. This is my personal opinion. You may say this is a load of hooey, but this is my personal opinion. I'm an overachiever. I'm a Pollyanna. I'm not an overachiever. I just work a lot. But I try hard. I was walking down the sidewalk in West Coconut Grove, and there was a lock that was locked to a U-bolt in the sidewalk. And there's nothing attached to it. It was just a locked to the sidewalk. And so that lock, holding nothing, in a part of the Coconut Grove where there wasn't anything really valuable enough to lock down, no one would have took anything from that part of that little spot in the neighborhood, even if you locked it down. I got on my belly and took pictures of that. So I got the one that made me feel like the trees in the background and the lock in the foreground and the U-bolt holding the ground down made a statement to me. So it's my job to find the beauty. If the beauty is something that's beautiful, it's easy. If the sun's going down and you're on the balcony of the 12th floor over the beach, great. That's the best. That's easy. But if you're taking a picture of someone and it's dark and, you know, they were out protesting and there's blood coming down the side of their face because someone hit them with a stick, and there's a lot of people behind them, and it tells that other story, that's a beautiful moment too, but it's not a beautiful and happy moment.
Exactly.
But that epic intensity of emotion is something that transfers. It's something that you can share with another human and make it possible for those experiences to be shared by other people.
Very interesting with you, your definition of beauty. Thank you. Thank you. Was great to hear you. Tom, what's your goal as an artist?
To keep printing. I like printing. Print for me, print for other people, make some more books, teach my grandchildren how to print. I would like to see these two presses become part of a book art center in Miami.
Yes.
I would like to do that. I think it's important. All the big cities in the country have a book arts center. Book arts go on a shelf and last forever. And we have seen so many changes, even in the 25, 30 years that I've been here, that I would hate for the meaningful people and the meaningful conversations to go away. And, you know, works on paper and books and stuff like that, that's this container for ideas and emotions and experience. And sometimes you look back and stuff and go, wow, that looks so old. You know, or you see pictures of you in the 60s and you think, gosh, I look like such a goof with those clothes on. But sometimes you see something in that picture and it looks exactly like, you know, your grandson, and you realize that history repeats itself and that all those things are still very much in the world, and that you're stewarding those ideas and those experiences and passing them on to other people.
Tom, what do you think about the meaning of the arts? There is a meaning in the art. It's important.
I
Why?
think arts are something that have carried almost everybody through this pandemic, because the batteries never die in my book.
Put
I
it a
don't have to
little bit
worry
in
if
the
the
middle.
wireless goes out. All art, whether it's on my wall, whether it's streaming on my computer, whether it's coming in from a speaker somewhere, all the arts that have nurtured me during this time, making it, consuming it, giving it to others, everybody in Miami-Dade County that has anything to do with art did what you're doing. They put shows online. They had readings online. I think it's incredible that 100,000 businesses, small businesses, went under in the last year, but that the artists that I know are still making art. The bookstores that I go to are still selling books. And I patronize bookstores all over the country, because when I go to the residencies, I meet other writers. But art is essential. Art is essential. Miami-Dade Cultural Affairs sent out surveys right away. Americans for the Arts sent out metrics to figure out how did this affect our life on a very pragmatic level. What came in, what came out, what did you lose? You know, was there any business? What do you have to do? They helped me continue to be a person who's able to do this. So that tells me that we must be doing something important. It works on a national level. It works on a local level. It works in here when I'm making a little print this big. And it makes when I go in your studio and I see this work that, you know, I don't even have to talk. I just sit there and kind of like soak it up. These things for me are the difference between being in an empty room and being in this thing that's full of life. I don't think I could live without making art, but I think I could probably just draw. But I really love making prints. I really love making prints. I love making prints for other people. My goal is to make 50 prints for everybody I know, and they can pay $4 for the prints each and sell them for 20 or 50 or 100. And they would be able to go out and buy paint or film or frame a painting or You know, like the nice thing about prints is that everybody could buy print. So Dennis collects art, and he has collections that are just mind blowing. I have catalogs going back 25 years of shows that he's put together. And I remember walking in there and feeling like I went on a trip somewhere and bringing that with me for weeks. But a small work on paper can do the same thing. And several works on paper, as a printmaker, I trade with people, has made my life very rich because all those people are on my wall too. It's not like I'm looking at paper. It's not like I'm looking at a picture of something. I'm looking at all the story, all the emotion, and all the other context that goes with it. So for me, it's the bedrock.
Tom, do you feel that Miami is related to your work, has an influence in your work? Is your work is reflecting something specifically about this place, Miami?
Content-wise, Miami is in a lot of stuff I do. Maybe not Miami that looks like me, but Miami, I'm the minority. So I have been changed like the coffee that goes through the coffee maker at Versailles. It's just this dirt when they put it in, but it comes out, and it's this dark juice with sugar that makes you put some pep in your step. It ain't coffee, it ain't dirt, and it ain't water anymore. It's something brand new. So the stories of Miami are very much in my work. Sometimes they're obvious. Sometimes, like in the print project, Raise Your Voice, Tremendo Arroz con Mango is one of the prints. And you know, like, and I learned a little bit of Creole because I'm in Little Haiti, and when I asked for words, I asked for words in whatever language they chose.
Yeah.
And also there's a lot of books in those things, and there's a lot of stories in those things. So, but the pictures, pretty much, I haven't been to a residency in a few years. I have work in progress from Red Wing. Like I say, I really do take forever to make everything. But that's just, you know, I want to do a good job. It takes a while. But you'll see more Little Haiti. There's another picture coming up that will be Coconut Grove. The book that I'm doing right now will have images that are kind of universal images, but they'll be attached to two women who are poets. One's living in Colorado right now, and the other one lives in Hollywood. But it's a book that will be a feminist book. I'm being advised by real feminists, not a man. I'm seeking out, you know, proper guidance, and that book will be Miami. I mean, sometimes it's the words, sometimes it's the picture, sometimes it's the way I look at things in other places. I bought a T-shirt when I was in Red Wing for the Hispanic outreach program, and wore it at school when I came home. And these guys are like, "What, are you crazy?" They laughed at me. They said, "Hispanic outreach? You're like surrounded by Hispanics." I said, "That's the part I love. That's why the shirt means something to me, because you guys made me see all these things.
Exactly.
You made me listen. You made me see." And I like that. So
do you think
Miami's everywhere.
Yes, yes, I agree with you. Do you think that there is how you see the Miami art scene? Do you feel that there is a Miami art scene?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think they're grown-ups. And I think, you know, as in any system, there's tiers, and some people are madly successful. Some people are coming in. Some people are just relentless. Some people are new and they do things, and I see it and I'm like, wow, you need to talk to so-and-so. So the Miami art scene really depends on communication.
Exactly.
This year in December, last year in December, I think William Cordova put everybody out on the street, and I was grateful to be a small part of that. My work
The
is still
biennial.
yeah, and I had, there's 2 pieces here and there's 2 pieces in the Grove, and they're still taped up to poles, and people walk by there, and one of them has words that are on a house around the corner, because I drive by that house every day, and I thought, well, he's broadcasting, I might as well receive that as well. And I gave him a poster too. He didn't know me from a hole in the ground, but I wave at him every day because he's a gardener and I was a gardener. And he, you know, when I went to give him the poster, even though he didn't know me, he knew that I meant well. And he said, thank you. And I said, you're very welcome.
That is a nice story. Tom, you know, and this is going to be my last question. I want to see if we have, it's a little frozen.
Okay.
This is going to be my last question because I want to see if we have a little of time for if somebody has a question in the chat.
Okay.
I am an art instructor too, and this is something that, a question that my students would ask you. What would you advise to somebody that is going to start an art career, to be successful, to be established, to be professional? What would you advise to somebody like that?
It just so happens that twice in the last 2 days, I have talked to a 10th grade girl that was my student last year. And I told her, you have to put yourself out there. You have to be the artist, make the art, take the classes, learn the art, write your resume, keep track of what you do. Don't badmouth yourself. Everyone else will do that for you. And the more you do this and the more you engage with this community, the more you realize you're not making art as much as you are making a world where art happens. And if you pay attention, all that stuff will seep into you. The stuff that you really want to do, like if you want to be a painter, then they got to come and find you because you're a painter. And you can teach them what they have to do with the brushes, but they have to understand how people look and how people see and what drives them too. But you can be an artist in the 10th grade. There's all kinds of venues. There's all kinds of opportunities. You can write a scholarship request, and you can be an artist because you made a big pile of art and you went to college for free. There was an article in the New York Times this past Sunday that said kids who get AP scores and ACT scores and take classes that are advanced classes can get up to $100,000 in college tuition money in some states. And all the same things are true of art too. So art is this thing that can carry you wherever you want to go. But, you know, if you're a carpenter and you only build a doghouse and you only build one, you're not going to make very much money. But if you're always working, and you're listening and learning, and you have a community around you, that community lives to make you thrive because they're in the community too. So you just got to work. You have to learn the skills. If you want to be good at something, you got to find someone who's better than you, and don't sit on a high horse and say, well, no, I don't want to know that. If you ask someone to teach you something, you have to listen to what they tell you because they may not have learned it the same way you did. So the whole process is important.
You know, usually Instagram is give us 1 hour to do it. We are very close. I don't know. I don't want to be caught. I prefer we finish.
Yeah, that's okay.
We say bye and we finish. But 2 things. I want to ask you if you want to add something else, and also tell me how people can go to your print lab.
I am.
Have to do an appointment to see you.
If they text me, and
Okay.
you know, and I'm here. If the red truck is here, I'm here. If I'm printing and I have ink on my hands, I can talk, but I can't really,
Yes.
you know, philosophize
They have to do
or
an
anything
appointment
like that. But I'm here all the time,
Mm-hmm.
and you know, there's many times when I'm here and if someone walks in, I show them stuff. Right now, with everything that's going on, I wear a mask. I have a sign on the door
Exactly.
that no more than 2 people in here, and I adhere to all those standards because my youngest son works at the University of Miami Hospital, and I'm a viejito, and I want to be older. I want to be ancient, because I might. Hokusai said when he was 80, maybe I know enough to do something now and get it right. So I got time, you know, to really get this stuff down.
Okay.
But if
I am going.
they're welcome to come by. I'm across the
Exactly.
street from Sir, which is the best empanadas around. I'm next door to Clive's, which is the best Jamaican food around. And Panther Coffee is on the other side of me. And, you know, it's like an all-day thing. But, you know, short visits are fine. And if someone wants to print, I print. It's what I do. And teaching people also. Once COVID beats a retreat and we all reach some different state of normal, I'll be teaching classes in book arts and printing. So other people can
Okay.
do that too.
There is information about Tom Print Lab here. Also, the exhibitions that he is participating. There is information in the post. I'm gonna post this video in my page, and I'm gonna send it to Tom too. And I want to say thank you, Tom, for
Thank you.
Your dialogue was our dialogue. Thank you for your answers, and was very, very rich. I really enjoy it. And thanks everybody to join us. Well, I'm gonna leave Tom to say bye.
I thank you everybody for teaching me everything. As an old white guy in Miami, I have been exposed to so many riches, so many things that I never knew. And that's kind of the thing that compels me to be trying to pass along as much as possible. So
Thank you, Tom.
thank
You
you.
so much. And thanks everybody to join us. And I see you in a week. Bye.
Thank you.